Hello and welcome to the second part of the video on how narcissism affects its victims. This is the sixth video in this Narcissistic Abuse series, and it's part two, as I said, on the effects or the consequences of narcissistic abuse on the victim. In part one, we spoke quite a lot about the medical impacts on people. And in this video, I'm going to focus more on the psychological, the social, and the interpersonal relationship ways in which narcissistic abuse affects people. So people who've been in a narcissistic abuse to a lesser or greater degree are likely to display the following. Okay, firstly, remember, the narcissist has to be superior. So the narcissist is always going to make you feel you are not good enough, you are inferior, you are second rate, you are doing everything wrong. And therefore, it's not at all surprising that we tend to find people who've experienced narcissistic abuse have very low self-esteem, have low confidence, and they tend not to be assertive, because you certainly can't be assertive because the narcissist will squash you. And all you will have experienced in a narcissistic relationship is somebody putting you down. And unfortunately, with the best will in the world, as human beings, we do take in what people say. We can try not to, but the people you spend your time with affect how you think and affect how you think about yourself. And if they are constantly putting you down, you're going to start thinking of yourself as a lesser being. So self-esteem is something that a lot of narcissistic abuse victims need to work on, because the narcissist really knocks it. It's also one of the reasons why people don't leave narcissistic partners or abusive relationships, because they've been broken down so much and told they are so not worthy of anything or anyone decent that they don't believe there is better for them, and they don't believe they deserve any better. Okay, so that's self-esteem. Another aspect, a second factor that it affects, is your personal boundaries. Remember, the narcissist doesn't respect other people's boundaries. What is yours is also mine. And, well, I'm just going to take what I want. If I want it, I can have it. And that can even extend as far as breaking the law. So people who've been in relationships with narcissists tend to have no personal boundaries. They don't have boundaries in terms of what people can say to them, how they can speak to them, their time, the demands that are made of them. Just in general, they won't have. If you're in a relationship with a narcissist, and a particularly nasty or malignant narcissist, and you try to set boundaries, they will ride all over you. They will make your life a living hell. They may possibly even physically attack you. And of course, they will verbally abuse you. So you get quite scared to set personal boundaries. So people who've experienced narcissistic abuse tend not to be that great at setting personal boundaries. And this is also something, if you've come out of a narcissistic relationship, that you need to work on. A third aspect is, and it relates to the narcissist being so demanding and everything being their way, and they need to be the center of attention, and they need to be adored and appreciated and everything else, is that people who are victims of narcissistic abuse are extremely keen to help out, and usually immediately. They tend to forget about their own needs, because their own needs, well, they didn't count. If you're with a narcissist, it's only their needs that count. So they don't recognize their needs. They are over-focused on the needs of other people and meeting the needs of other people, and they can be very quick to do this, even if it's inconvenient to them. Okay, a fourth factor relating to narcissistic abuse, and obviously this one makes quite a lot of sense, is that there's a lack of trust. And people struggle with communication. Of course there would be. If you're going to go into a relationship with somebody, and perhaps they start out really nice, they start out love bombing to get you hooked, and then they suddenly change and become really cruel and really nasty, you're going to start wondering about yourself, and you're going to start mistrusting yourself, and you're going to start doubting your own ability to see things clearly and to understand things properly. So there's quite a lot of mistrust in relationships with people who've been in narcissistic abusive relationships. A fourth factor is that people who've experienced narcissistic abuse tend to be blamed for everything. The narcissist never does wrong. The narcissist never takes responsibility for what they do. So people who've experienced narcissistic abuse tend to jump to blaming themselves for everything. Even if something, or most of us would look and see, well, no, that's clearly you are responsible for that, you did that. The victim of narcissistic abuse tends to take all the blame on them and tends to feel guilty. So there's a lot of blame, a lot of feeling guilty, and it's very easy for other people to put the blame onto a person who's experienced narcissistic abuse because they don't know how to defend against this, and they don't know how to protect themselves. So if you've experienced narcissistic abuse, just remember you also need to be very careful that you are not somebody who is nobody's going to keep blaming you, and that if it's not your fault, you don't allow people to make it your fault. And if you're not responsible for something, you don't take responsibility for it. Okay, another aspect of narcissistic abuse, and I guess it's one we can probably expect, is victims of narcissistic abuse often feel very hopeless and feel very powerless. Of course you would. As human beings, it is psychologically healthy to feel that you have some level of control, you are to some extent in charge of your life. Obviously, you don't have total control. There's some things that are just going to happen that there's nothing you can do about. But generally, we've referred to a term called agency, which is a sense of I can do something with my life. I can decide who I want to spend it with, how I want to spend it, what I want to do, what work I want to do, what people I want around me. So we feel relatively proactive, and we feel we can get on with life. And we can create a life that we want, for the most part. People who've experienced narcissistic abuse don't feel like this, because in fact they are powerless. Anytime they try and do something that they want, or something that meets their needs, or something that helps them fulfill a dream, they get squashed by the narcissist, unless the narcissist is in complete agreement as well. But in a narcissistic, or in a relationship with a narcissist, it's always the narcissist's way. So it is very difficult for the victim of narcissistic abuse to feel anything but hopeless and but powerless. And often this is one of the reasons why you may need some professional help if you've been in a relationship with a narcissist. The final thing I'm going to say, and it does sometimes happen, usually by the time people get out of a narcissistic relationship, they don't act like this. But unfortunately, way too often, the narcissistic abuse has been so bad that the victim actually protects the narcissist. Instead of showing the person up for who they are and talking about who they really are and what they've done, they make excuses, they blame themselves, they might blame other people, but they sit there and they protect the person. So there is no consequence for what they have done. There's no reason for them to change. And basically, well, they can go on carrying on like this, and every person they come into contact is going to experience narcissistic abuse. This is quite hard to deal with. It's very hard for people who are trying to remove somebody from a narcissistic relationship and wonder why on earth you would want to protect somebody who was abusive, and often even physically abusive to you, and may have hurt you and broken bones and given you bruises and so forth. But unfortunately, all the other factors that we've spoken about, the low self-esteem, the lack of boundaries, the mistrust, the sense of hopelessness and powerless, often means that a victim of narcissistic abuse will protect the the narcissist. It is not a healthy thing to do. It is quite important, if you want to heal from narcissistic abuse, that you own what was your part, which was that you accepted abuse, but you don't take responsibility for the narcissist's behavior. Adult human beings own their behavior. They are 100% responsible for everything they say and do. Everything. Even if they're drunk, even if they're having a bad day, whatever. Adult human beings own their behavior, they own their words, and they need to be held accountable for that. From my side, have a wonderful week. I hope you don't encounter too many narcissists. If you are in a in a relationship with a narcissist, if you experience or you have experienced abuse, think about whether any of these apply to you, and it may be very well the case that you need to get some professional help. Take care.